speaker, Director Jonas Björck from the Ministry of Education and Research. It's kind of your last performance, we just found out, because you're starting a new job very soon at Forte as Director General.
Yes, very soon at April 20th, I will start at Forte as the Director General. So looking forward very much to that. I think there are a number of co-workers here from Forte.
Yeah. Okay. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to this very important conference that has attracted so many people. I think there are more than 200 people here today. It has been really interesting to hear the talks. Unfortunately, I wasn't here during the morning, but to hear Reinhilde giving the international overview. I can skip that from my presentation, I think, after your excellent presentation, and also to hear about the Norwegian Center of Excellence program. The other Nordic countries was much earlier adopters, I think, than Sweden on having these kind of funding schemes. I also have the apologies from my state secretary, Malin Cederfelt Östberg, who couldn't attend today, but she is giving you all the best of luck with this conference. I also have a personal memory of the Linnaeus grant scheme that you were talking about this morning. The first Linnaeus grants was announced in 2006, and at the time I was working at the Swedish Research Council, responsible for the natural science panel evaluating these grants, and it was a very impressive panel with a lot of distinguished researchers, and the panel was chaired by former director of the National Science Foundation in the US, Rita Caldwell, and it was really inspiring to be a part of that process, and it feels a little bit special to stand here today, almost 15 years later, talking about these Centers of Excellence programs. However, my presentation will be a broad approach, and I will discuss strategic investments in general, and including then Centers of Excellence. And I will start with an international comparison, even though we had the excellent one by Reinhilde. I will say a few words about that. So, as measured in number of papers and citations, Swedish research has good quality and is international competitive. On the other hand, considering that Swedish funding of R&D is among the highest in the EU, and in an international comparison, we could maybe do even better. Several comparable countries invest less in R&D and still have a higher production of papers and have a higher visibility of those papers. We are in a world that moves fast. Many countries increase their investments in R&D, and this makes them more competitive in an international comparison. And exactly like Reinhilde said, after many decades of leadership by the United States and the EU and Japan, other economies have increased their R&D spending, with China as the most significant case. This might also affect business investments, who move the core of their research to where they can find qualified people that are close to their most important markets. In the government declaration in January 2019, the Prime Minister was clear on that the priority for research policy during this term would be twofold. First, to maintain and protect the free research, and second, to further promote research that contributes to the solution of societal challenges. These two priorities are the starting point for the coming research bill that will be presented to the Parliament later this year. It has been an international trend in making concentrated investments in centers of excellence. The motivation for this varies. Sometimes it is to increase the quality, and sometimes to meet societal challenges. And societal challenges can include everything from development of the society, industry, to global challenges such as climate. Free research is also of fundamental importance to get high-quality research in areas that are relevant for present and emerging societal challenges. When scientists decide themselves, they often select areas that do meet such challenges. And I will now try to summarize the strategic R&I investments that have been done in Sweden the last 20 years in a couple of minutes. So the first specific programs for Centers of Excellence in Sweden at a larger scale was made by the Social Democrat government in 2004. and the Linnaeus program and the Baseli program was part of this. These programs were a relatively minor part of the total government investment in research. The most part of the research budget, including new funds, was then for free research. That is, the government left it to the universities and to the research funding organizations to decide on the programs. The center-right government during 2008 to 2014 presented a research and innovation bill in 2008 with strategic research areas as a centerpiece. The major part of the new funding went to such areas identified by the government following a dialogue with industry, society, and the research funding agencies. The intention was to give predictable and stable funding on long term. But even with these focal areas, most of the research funds were still free for universities or funding agencies to decide on. The criteria for selecting strategic research areas were research that can contribute to the solution of global challenges, areas where Sweden had a world-leading research, areas where Swedish companies had R&D and where public investments could contribute to further strengthen the competitiveness. An evaluation in 2015 showed that most of the strategic research areas have been very successful. In the research bill of 2012, several additional programs were initiated. Although the original plan for the strategic research areas was to focus only a few areas, after 2 research bills presented, allocations of funds for strategic R&I or centers of excellence had resulted in more than 30 priority areas. In the bill 2016, several 10-year national research programs were presented. The goal was still to meet societal challenges in several selected areas such as climate, sustainable societies, migration and integration, and antimicrobial resistance. These programs are governed through strategic research agendas produced by the funding agencies in cooperation with stakeholders outside academia. The government stressed the importance of cross-disciplinary and cross-sectional approaches. The aim for the coming research and innovation bill is that Sweden shall continue to be a leading research nation. It is important to continue to train scientists and specialists with knowledge in the international scientific forefront so that we will be able to contribute to global challenges. This is especially important now considering the focus of Agenda 2030 and our responsibility to contribute to solution of global challenges. High-quality research is also an instrument to attract high-tech companies to localize their R&D to Sweden. This will give us a higher knowledge content in Swedish products, more employment in the high-tech sector, and increased export incomes. We must also give scientists the opportunity and possibility to focus on areas with high risk and high return, which was also mentioned earlier. The introduction of 10-year research programs in 2016 was one way to address this. By doing that, we are giving scientists the security they need in order to plan for an extended time. These programs can be further developed and possibly new introduced. So, to summarize, the theme of this conference is Centers of Excellence. As described, successive governments have for 20 years made investments in different forms of Center of Excellence and strategic research funding. The fraction of the funds for this purpose has therefore increased over time. Starting in the 80s and 90s, there were small programs during a couple of years for areas where policymakers had identified a social challenge that needed research. The more substantial programs came in the research bill starting 2004. The evaluation of strategic research areas in 2015 showed that most of the centers had high quality. One may ask oneself if the result of the evaluation confirms that the investment was successful. Many of the centers were already excellent from the start. When comparing the scientific output made by individual researchers participating in the centers, it is easy to note that these centers included the best and most cited scientists. The citations of those are higher or even much higher than the average for a field. This is no surprise. They were selected because they were excellent. Seen over time, it cannot be easily confirmed that they benefit from being a center. Considering the large extra investments given, one can imagine that the production and visibility would greatly increase. This is, however, seldom the case. Excellent researchers participating in an excellent center continue to do excellent science. But it's more difficult to confirm that their work has been much improved by the investment. This may be talking against the Center of Excellence would be the way to give us research excellence. However, something that speaks for centers of excellence is that they form an environment for excellence with stable long-term conditions that gives researchers the opportunity to develop excellence. In addition, it remains that the government must ensure that research funded by the public also performed in areas usual for the public, that is, that the research meets societal challenges. And I'm sure that this conference has contributed to inform policymakers on how investments in centers of excellence have influenced Sweden's position as a research nation, as well as how these investments have contributed to address societal challenges. I wasn't here this morning when you were talking about the Linnaeus grants, but the ministry always has its spies in place. So I was told that the key evaluation questions for the evaluation was answered with yes in 3 times and no in at one question and possibly at one question. So it seems like the scheme has, the Linnaeus grant scheme has been able to establish sustainable research environments. It has led to research, at least to some extent, to social relevance, and it has certainly promoted Sweden as a research nation internationally. However, the ability for the universities to prioritize and profile hasn't been that successful with this instrument, at least. So, ending this short speak, I hope that the following panel discussion can give interesting advice on how and if Sweden need new Center of Excellence program. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jonas, and a symbolic gift to you too.